I don't usually do things like this on here, but I feel like I have a duty to. The knowledge that I have, what I've experienced, I need to warn people. I need to warn people just how inviting and befriending these very evil people can be. Only half the reason why I became pagan is because of, what these, what my family did and what they believed. I have no malice against modern day Abrahamic religions. I think that that's fine because they don't believe in harming anyone. But that's not what my family believed in. They belong to an Abrahamic cult. It's like a old age belief, like really old, like 1700s old. And that kind of ideology, it's very neo-Nazi, pre-Nazi even, kind of beliefs. And when I was born, they very quickly realized that I was different. Things that most people would not notice. Some of it was legitimate, like, it could be something like a kid says, okay, mommy, daddy, I had this strange dream, and the very next day, that dream comes true. That dream, whatever happened in the dream, it was a premonition, So it could be something like that, some kind of small proof of magic like that. It could even be just a medical issue, When I was born, they believed that they needed to test me before I was even born. So they gave my mother something to stop the labor. I was stuck, long enough to where, okay, if it's a child of God, it's going to live. If it's a, child of the devil, it'll be dead by now. So I was stuck in the birth canal long enough, and when they pulled me out and I was alive, I had a red ring around my irises. And they perceived that not as a medical condition, not as anything other than just red eyes, devil child. And I was told the story, but I was told it in a different light. I was told it that in the words they used is very, very, you need to pick up on stuff like this. If they don't say we, and instead they say the doctors, that is a big, all they said was, the doctors thought it was a miracle. Never said we. Never. They don't have a picture of me, to celebrate being born. Every birthday that almost every birthday that I ever had, I got really, really sick, and they always said it was a stomach flu, but no, it was poison. I tell you right now, extra dose of poison. They would poison me every day, but that was an extra dose. I always thought that it was just like, growing up, I had stomach problems and things. No. Breathing problems, no. Because it all stopped as soon as I got away from the source, the culprit of the poison. Plus, once my mother, well, several times, stuck me with a needle, but one time I remember specifically, she stuck me with a needle. I didn't see it, but I felt it go in. Start feeling weird, passed out, and the next thing you know, a week or so later, I wake up in the drawer of a hospital morgue. Yes, I was in and out of it for a little while in the hospital before I woke up in the drawer. Apparently they just thought I was dead a little too soon. And when my father came, my mother and father came, my father couldn't contain his anger, and he said, you're embarrassing me. To be alive, I guess, embarrasses him. And then, my grandmother had come to bring her condolences because he'd already told everybody I was dead, like the very second they put me in there. And she comes in, and I hear her voice, and I run down to see her, even though they told me to hide in my room. And she doesn't understand why they said I was dead if I wasn't dead. And so he screams at me, embarrassed me in front of my mother, and she threatens to get police involved. She does. Police come, they search the house, and they find 2 syringes empty, but they test it. my grandmother was on the suspicion that it was drugs, but it was never drugs, it was again poison. So they test for drugs, but it's poison. It comes up unidentified compound, I believe is what they said. And I was pretty young, so I don't remember exactly. But I remember this one policeman gives me a teddy and says, I have a doctor your age, and you know, I very much think that they did something horrible to you and I want to see them in jail for life, but they won't let me investigate further. I don't have authority to do anything, and I'm so sorry. And he started crying, and honestly, that was more than anyone has ever done for me. As far as, you know, law enforcement goes. So, you know, actually he did a lot just by saying that, and a bit teary-eyed, but my grandmother was the only one that I know of for sure that wasn't a part of that cult. Just a normal, regular person trying to do the right thing. When she found out that the police wouldn't help, she took matters into her own hands and took me in the middle of the night. The very next day, the police are wondering where I went, and she's going to eventually have to give me back, she knows, but she pleads with him over the phone. You should at least, you know, child abuse, something. You know, they pumped her up with drugs. What, she's still on the assumption it was drugs. And, you know, got off the phone and said, they won't help us. The police won't help us. And just started crying and crying, started praying. She was a mess, and I asked her, what is drugs? You know, what does abuse mean? And she very reluctantly told me what drugs meant. I don't remember if she told me the other one. And she wouldn't tell me anything else. I said, well, Mom, Dad, did they do this to me? You know, did they... I remember her telling me what murder meant, and I said, did they try to murder me? And she said, I cannot tell you. If I told you, you'd be afraid for life, and I can't. But the problem was that eventually I would get more proof. I didn't even know what a gun was yet, but I remember staring it in the face and knowing what it looked like. My father pointed it at me, says, look up and say hello. Literally, he wanted me to look up because I think he wanted to see the expression on my face when he shot me. He shot me in the chest, but it just barely missed my heart. I was lucky. And it's point blank range, so it did a lot of damage, but didn't hit any organs, vital organs. And I have a scar from that. I do. And I was told my entire life, anytime I brought this up, you're insane, that was just a dream. When I was really little, they would say, you know, that's just a dream, that's just a dream, that's just a dream, over and over and over again. They get really mad, really pissed when I insisted it wasn't a dream, that it actually happened. And now I've got a scar to remember this, you know. But PTSD is funny, you know, if you don't fully understand it, especially when you're a child, you kind of temporarily forget all of it. And maybe not all of it, but a lot of it. And I was kind of going through memory loss for a while because of that. And then one day it all came flooding back to me. So as an adult, I confronted them again, and they said the same sorts of things, you know, after everything that we've given you and how we've treated you. And, you know, they acted like normal parents for the most part, except for when they would abuse me. And as I got older, they thought I wouldn't remember as a child. That's the only reason why they did those obvious things as a child. As I got older, they did stuff like put poison in my food and water. Things that I would never know. And that's why, you know, I felt terrible, but I thought that the rest of my childhood was normal. The rest of my childhood I thought was completely normal. But then I looked back at how sick I got on my birthdays, extra sick, sicker than normal sick. And they'd always say, oh, it's just a coincidence that on your birthday you get the stomach flu, you know. And it just, how many times that happened just cannot be. It just can't. They will try to use befriendment to gain trust, not only with their reputation, but with you. Trust with you. So that you never expect. And usually, as an older child and as an adult, they're not going to do anything obvious because these operations are underground. So if someone does this to you, they're going to be the people that you think are your best friend. That's what's so scary about it. You really have to look for the really, and I'm about to tell you what to look for, the kinds of things to look for. When I confronted them on it, you know, not only did they get really angry about it and said that they didn't remember anything and that never happened and they never did anything, they also said that they were, to the point that they were actually, you know, insulted, deeply insulted, that I would even consider that this what will happen. Either they tell you you're insane, or they tell you it's a dream, and then they say that they are insulted and that it hurts them deeply, and that how could you possibly, to try and make you feel bad, you know. And a lot of times, if you're told long enough that you're insane or that it's a dream, especially as a child, you might believe it. And as a child, I did end up believing it, a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it. So, you know, I had to go through that phase of saying, wait a minute, no, this isn't right. This really did happen. I have the scars to prove it. This really did happen, you know. And once I figured that out, I was like, okay, you know, this isn't normal. And I didn't know what normal was as a child, but as an adult, I do. As a child, I thought it was normal for them to just act like that. But as an adult, I understand that if you have a child that has scars from being shot in the chest, what are you going to tell them as an adult? As an adult, you say, I never knew this if you were truly innocent, you say, I never knew this happened. Why didn't you tell me? You know, we're going to find out who did this. When did this happen? What's the last thing you remember? You know, do you remember exactly where you were? You know, we'll figure out who did this to you. We'll get the police in. Nothing like that. All they did was try to be like, you know, I'm the problem. How dare I think that they would do something like that? How dare I think that they would do something like that after legitimately giving me a lot of things and presents as kid, and, you know, showing that befriendment in a very outwardly overdoing way. They gave me so many things to try and make up for the stuff that they did. So this is what it's really scary, because as children, you know, you're even more susceptible to not knowing, you know, whose side are they really on, and to not knowing for sure, was it a dream? Was I, you know, insane? As an adult, you don't question things as much as you did as a child. So in a way, in a sense, it might be even worse than as an adult, because if someone's there, always have your back, seems like your best friend, always the one to help you out, you know, if someone ever seems too friendly, there's probably a reason. If someone invites you over for dinner, you know, my family, this cult that they're a part of, they have a repetition of what they do. You know, they get to know people, and a lot of times that's in situations where someone does a job for them at the house, or it's their hairstylist, or who knows, but they get to know people and they try to befriend them, they invite them over for dinner, and before you know it, this literally happened with more than one person, within an hour or several hours, or at most a day after they had that dinner, those people die the exact same way, from asphyxiation, because they choke on their own vomit from the poison they were given. So autopsists in small towns, like I said, if you get the right person at the right time on the right shift, these people will work in groups. They're a group, that's why they call it a cult. They will work in groups. If you get the right autopsist especially, anything goes at that point, you know, because they can put down whatever the fuck they want to, you know, as long as it's believable enough. And same with doctors, the same with police. They had a knack for staying in these towns where maybe not everyone was like that, but they, again, if you time it right, you know, that's why I'm telling you, this stuff really does happen. It really is out there. It's underground, but it is out there, and it is more than you think.